Welcome to the Appleseed, the storytelling podcast from BYU Radio, where your family can gather for great stories from great storytellers in every episode. I'm your host, Sam Payne, and today we're doing something a little different. We usually bring you an episode of roughly a half hour featuring two fantastic storytellers, but every once in a while I get a hankering to play for you a story I love that may not quite fit into that mold, and this is just such a story. It's a good, long story about outer space. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm a big fan of outer space stuff. Now, I'm a little too young for the moon landing, but I do remember watching the first launch of the Space Shuttle Columbia when I was in elementary school, and that lit up my imagination like nothing else. And, well, what would it be like to be a storyteller invited by NASA itself to create and tell space exploration stories like the ones that inspired me when I was a kid? Well, storyteller Jay O'Callahan knows what that's like. Jay is one of the premier live storytellers in America, has been for decades. And in 2008, NASA commissioned Jay to write and perform a story commemorating their 50th anniversary. After 2 years of research and interviews, Jay premiered Forged in the Stars, a story in which he recounts some really iconic moments in NASA's history. And I've loved this story since I heard Jay tell it years ago. So, have I been kind of looking forward to an opportunity to play it for my Appleseed friends? Well, yeah, I have. So we went looking for a reason, maybe something cool that NASA is doing. And because NASA is doing cool stuff all the time, we found one. Today, February 27th, marks the launching of Sphere X, a space observatory that for the first time will map the entire sky in optical and near-infrared light. Sphere X will not only receive new information about hundreds of millions of galaxies as they exist today, but also information about their history and how they began. And so, in honor of NASA's Sphere X launch, and also because we've wanted to bring you this story for a long time, but felt like it was too long for a regular Appleseed episode, we bring you now Forged in the Stars. Take it in 2 sittings if you need to, but we bet your imagination will be captured by Jay O'Callahan.
T minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff, we have liftoff. About 2 years ago, I was delighted to be sitting at a conference table, NASA headquarters, Washington, D.C. I was delighted because I had been commissioned to create a story in honor of NASA's 50th anniversary. My NASA boss, Dr. Ed Hoffman, he directs a leadership program, he said, "What's Jay's mission statement?" Someone said, "Well, you ought to do a story about the International Space Station. That's where it's at." Someone else said, "Whatever you do, you got to do people in space and robots in space." Ed Hoffman said, "Jay, I want you to write a love letter to NASA." A love letter? NASA's an administration, an aeronautics and space administration. How do you write a love letter to an administration? Dear, beloved administration. But still, it was freeing, impractical, but freeing. So I flew off to do interviews. Johnson Space Center, Houston, Texas, responsible for putting people in space. And I'm thinking I'll be interviewing scientists, engineers, managers. Will they be arrogant? Will they be forthcoming? Well, they were very forthcoming. I was about to interview the chief engineer, Johnson Space Center. And I thought, this guy must be nervous. His job at the time was to put people on the moon 2020 to live, and then put people on Mars to live. I thought, he's probably so tense he looks like an erector set. And in he came. I'm Steve Altemus, 45 years old, youngest chief engineer. He had the grace of an athlete. I said, "Steve, what brought you to the work?" When he talked with his hands, he reminded me of a halfback going out for a pass. He said, "My great-great-grandfather Bruger built Lehigh University with his hands, stonemason. That was the generation of Americans that built the scaffolding for this country, and we are building the scaffolding for space. Wow! Then I was to interview a manager, and I thought, well, will he be talking like a bureaucrat? The manager turned out to be Judy Robinson. I said, Judy, what brought you to the work? She said, my dad was German and my mother was Austrian. When my mum was 14 was the night of Kristallnacht. That was the night the Nazis smashed the windows of the Jews. My mum managed to get to this country, but much of my family was lost in the Holocaust. Judy said, I grew up hearing this story, got a PhD. Now I am an advocate for the safety of the astronauts. I'm paying this country back. Again, wow, all these interviews. Then I flew off to Pasadena, California, to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, responsible for putting robots into space, unmanned spacecraft. Robots, what a bore! But I was wrong. These scientists were passionate about their work. I interviewed Rob Manning, chief engineer for the Mars mission, and he turned out to be the storyteller. He said, Mars is a mystery story. Where did the water go? Is it possible part of Mars broke off and brought life to Earth? Then I interviewed a physicist, Dr. Ed Stone at Caltech. When Ed Stone was 36, he was the chief project scientist for something called the Voyager mission. Well, he talked about the solar system in a way that it opened up like a flower before me. I flew off back to Massachusetts with 1,000 pages of interviews, facts. I'm taking a course in astronomy. I'm reading 40 books. And I'm thinking, so many of the scientists and engineers said they loved this work. Could I make a love story? No, that's absurd. My job is to squeeze 1,000 pages into my brain, and I'm getting more and more nervous. I'm turning into an erector set. I'm mowing the lawn one day, and I suddenly remembered one of the interviews at the Johnson Space Center in Houston with 3 interns. These are college students who are in college, then they're interns at NASA, college, all the way through college. I stepped into that room and I said to myself, is this the future of NASA? A young woman in front of me said, I'm Sarah Rieger, and I'm doing something that's never been done before. The next lunar lander may have 2 motors. That's what I'm doing. I turned to my left. There's an elegant young man, Daniel Orea. He said, my dad is Ethiopian, my mom is Hungarian. I've been an intern 4 times here. I come back because of the people. I'm going to get a PhD and spend my life here. Then I turned to my right. There is a wiry young guy, Cecil Shy Jr., Afro-American. And Cecil says, when I was a little kid, I loved to make these toy cars with motors. I was good at it. High school, I went to a career night, stepped in, and there's a model of the Mars rover. I thought I can do that. Why not? And then Cecil says, I think of little kids all over the world going to sleep, looking at the stars, thinking, I want to go there. And Cecil says, why not? And I love that. Why not? Why not let go of trying to squeeze 1,000 pages into my brain? Why not make a love story? Why not invent 2 characters who will tell true stories of NASA? And the characters spring to mind, Jack and Kate, in love, but something's gone wrong with their love. And so, my love letter to NASA is called Forged in the Stars. The time, late October 2007. The place, Boston, Massachusetts. On a bright, windy Friday morning, a young woman, Kate DeCordova, was running down a sloping sidewalk. She had a Red Sox cap on, her black hair flowing out behind her dark eyes, taking everything in. She was thinking, here comes the sun, checked her watch, 8:30. As long as she made the next trolley into Boston, she'd be on time for mechanical engineering. No one was late for mechanical engineering. As she was running, she could smell the salt sea air. And that reminded her last night. She'd been pouring some salt into the boiling spaghetti water, and the phone had rung. She picked it up. Kate, it's Jack. Jack Carver. She was shocked and delighted. She almost dropped the phone. Kate, something has happened. Jack Carver. Her former fiancé. 6 months ago in April, fiery scene, she had ended the engagement. And here was Jack's voice. Kate, you know the Sunday Science series at MIT. Jack Carver. Big, powerful, handsome guy, son of a Maine lobsterman. Now, Jack was getting a Ph.D. in astrophysics at MIT, but when he was nervous, he stuttered. Kate, a Russian scientist can't make it. So, my thesis advisor thought you and I could do the program on NASA. Our generation. He's going to get the Boston Globe. You've been an intern 4 times at NASA. Jack, you don't have to talk me into it. This is great. When do we do it? We do it Sunday, 3 weeks. I can't, Jack. I got the graduate record exams that Saturday. I'm sorry I can't study and prepare a program. I'm getting supper. I've got to run. Bye. Cynthia, supper's ready. Kate's apartment mate and best friend was Cynthia Moss. Cynthia referred to herself as the bony blonde from Minnesota. Cynthia Moss. She was a basketball star in St. Paul. Grew up in a tough neighborhood. And now she was majoring in music, and she loved all music, everything from Chinese opera to Sweet Honey in the Rock. Nobody ever called Cynthia Moss sweet. She had a temper. When she was a little kid, she looked at all of her friends and said, I'm going to have a big party and invite nobody. Well, her temper hadn't improved. They sat down for spaghetti, and Kate made the mistake of saying Jack called about NASA. Cynthia said, Kate, could we not talk about NASA tonight? This is my mother's birthday. She died of cancer because we lived near a toxic waste dump. Kate, we polluted the earth. We're polluting the sky. Can we not talk about NASA tonight? What I would love, Kate, is after supper, I want you to listen to a CD of Blind Willie Johnson singing Dark Was the Night. Blind Willie Johnson. Black man. In the 1920s in Dallas, he sang in the streets. Dark was the night. Guitar, voice, no words. Kate was thinking of all of that as she was running, and the streetcar went on by her. It would stop 20 yards ahead, but she had to get that to be on time for mechanical engineering, so she lengthened her stride. 10 yards from the trolley, a yellow maple leaf was floating down. The wind took it way up, and Kate took a chance, and she leapt way up and caught the leaf. Now she sprinted for the subway car, but the driver was closing the door. A formidable woman on the trolley said, "Wait!" He waited. Kate leapt on, showed her pass. The woman said, "Please, sit here." The woman had a crown of white hair, pearls, a handsome wool suit, black walking stick with a silver handle. She was clearly the empress of the streetcar. Kate sat down breathless. What a leap, what a catch, or an athlete or a dancer. Well, I was in a great soccer team in high school, Exeter Academy. Exeter Academy, wonderful school. Did you love it? I hated it. My roommate's dad was running the World Bank. My dad was running a little hardware store in Oklahoma. Did you stick it out? Can I boast? Boast! Senior year, I won a National Science Award, and I wrote and directed the senior play. It was about the planets. Everybody loved it except the boy who played Pluto. I bet you're a young professor now. I wish. I'm 27. I thought by now I'd be at NASA. "Ah, the Bahamas. I love the Bahamas." No, the space agency." "Oh, what happened?" "A bump happened. Instead of going to Harvard, I went back home because Dad had a terrible stroke. It took Mum and me 4 years to put the hardware store on firm footing, but I decided I wanted 3 things out of college. The Atlantic Ocean. I wanted to be an intern at NASA all the way through, and I wanted to write one other play." "What's your dream?" "My dream is to do well in the GREs and then get my PhD." No. What's your dream? What's your dream?" Well, I suppose my dream is to tiptoe among the stars." That's a dream. I'm Edith Whiteside. Kate de Cordova." "Kate de Cordova, a Spanish name." "Well, Oklahoma pioneer stock, so I guess everything. English, Scots-Irish, everything." "Oh, Kate de Cordova, this has been a delight. This is my stop. Museum of Fine Arts." Kate got up to let Edith go. At the last second, she said, "Edith, wait. Please, take the leaf. You give me hope. Today, the mummies, the Egyptian section." "Oh, no, members of the board, bunch of stiffs. I'll take them on because you give me hope." Kate was delighted with Edith Whiteside. She waved goodbye. The trolley went on, and Kate was laughing inside. That reminded her of the way she used to laugh with Jack Carver. She had met Jack Carver 3 years ago at Northeastern University. There was a lecture open to the public on Saturn's rings. It was crowded. She looked up, and there was a big, handsome guy, curly brown hair, windbreaker. He bent over and said, "I just got off the lobster boat, and afraid I smell wicked bad. It's all right if I sit down." She was charmed with the Maine accent. After the lecture, they went across the street. They had pizza, and they laughed for an hour. And she pointed out his Maine accent almost disappeared. He turned bright red. Well, the thing is, Kate, if I'm nervous, I either pour on the Maine accent or I stutter. Halloween. Kate and Cynthia had a big Halloween party. In the middle of the party, there was a knock on the door. Kate opened the door, and there was a big round mound of aluminum foil. Someone inside the aluminum mound barked, "Ruff, ruff, I'm the dog star." It was Jack. He was the hit of the party. In the springtime, one of Jack's classmates invited Jack and Kate to go sailing down at Pocasset at the edge of Cape Cod. So they started out on a little inlet. A squall came up. Kate moved the wrong way. The boom shifted and knocked her into the water. So Jack dove in to save her. Kate just swam over to the bank, climbed out. Jack, he swallowed the salt water. He was coughing, choking. She helped pull him out. When he was fine, she pushed him back in. She was thinking about that, and she realized she missed her stop, Northeastern University. The trolley was going down into the tunnel. When she got out, she ran back, but she was late for mechanical engineering. She pulled the Red Sox cap down, went in, sat in the back, and the professor said nothing, because Kate de Cordova was the best student she ever had. After class, Kate went out. The leaves are blowing all about, got her cell phone out. She called Jack. "Jack, it's Kate. I've changed my mind. I'll do the program at MIT. Great. What happened?" "I caught a leaf. Never mind. We'll get Cynthia to come." "Don't get Cynthia to come. She'll cause trouble. She's still wearing the green wig." "Jack, she wears it to her science class. Jack, if we're any good, she'll learn something. What am I supposed to do?" "All right, Kate. You do maybe 3 12-minute sections on putting people in space, and I will finish with maybe a 20-minute lecture on robots in space. Jack, this is the way we'll do it. The next 3 Thursdays, come to my apartment. 7 o'clock, we'll run things back and forth. Bye." Then she realized what Jack said. He would finish with a lecture on robots. One of the reasons she had ended the engagement is because Jack had become a critical bore. And it all started when he got that tweed jacket. She hated that tweed jacket. She got busy emailing friends, professors, colleagues at NASA, and she asked one question. What do you remember most about NASA? Thursday night, Jack was coming up the stairs. Cynthia and Kate had a third-floor apartment in Jamaica Plain. Kate was pacing in the kitchen. She was nervous because Jack could be so critical. She heard Cynthia going down the stairs, saying, "Jack, well done, Jack. Kate's got the GREs, everything rides on them. You've got her doing this dumb program. Well done, Jack." A few seconds later, she could hear Jack saying, "Oh, Cynthia, listen, I forgot. I found an apartment for you, just right. It's on the dark side of the moon." Kate said, "Jack, I'm in the kitchen." Oh, she thought, what do you do with your former lover? An awkward hug, peck on the cheek, you don't shake hands. And in came Jack to the kitchen. He was wearing the old windbreaker, big smile, dungarees. And luckily he had supper. He brought a pizza box between them. Oh, Jack, perfect. Sit down, Jack. We'll have the pizza later. Jack, I'm nervous, so I just want to start. So imagine we're at MIT, Sunday night. I'm going to say this. I'm an engineering student. I'm going to get a PhD and hope to work for NASA. I grew up in a little town in Oklahoma. When I was 5 years old, my dad and I were standing under the stars. My dad, usually a very practical man, ran a hardware store. Well, he was a poet that night. He said, "Kate, the blackness and the stars, they're not just above us, they're all around us, Kate. The earth's just a great ball moving in the blackness, and the stars are all around us, Kate." Well, that was magic to a 5-year-old girl. Tonight, I am going to tell you 3 true stories of NASA. The first story begins in 1948 in a working-class neighborhood in Oklahoma City. It begins with a 5-year-old boy running into the kitchen. Mom, I heard a voice coming from way up high." "A voice?" "Yes, it was coming from way up high by the sun." "What did it say?" "It said, I'm going to help get people to the moon." And she said, "Well, that's a vision, JC." And she said that's a vision because they were Cherokee, Osage. And their story is their people had come from the sky to the earth. You'll have to work for it, JC. His Cherokee name was J.C. High Eagle. His name in the white world, Jerry Elliott. And working for the vision meant being good at physics and mathematics. And J.C. High Eagle was very good at physics and mathematics. He did very well in high school. 1961. He entered the University of Oklahoma. Life was opening. And he found that many of the students didn't want him. What's the Indian kid doing here? Many of the professors didn't want him. "Listen, you're a fine young man. It's not your fault. Nature hands out gifts indiscriminately. Your people don't have the mental wherewithal to be scientists and engineers." He was humiliated. It burned, but he had the vision, and he stayed with it, and he did well. 1966, he decided to go on to graduate school at the University of Oklahoma, but there was no money. His stepfather had died. His mother was working. So this young man, J.C. High Eagle, went down to the police station. This is Norman, Oklahoma. Said, "I want to be a policeman." They gave him a test. He scored as high as anybody has ever scored. He became a full-time policeman and a deputy sheriff, which meant he could take only 2 courses a semester. 9 in the morning, 10 in the morning was electrical engineering. He would wear his uniform to class with a loaded gun, but it was Oklahoma. His mother called one day. "JC, I've got a telegram for you from the Army." "Open it." "You have to report to the draft board for your physical." He passed. Another telegram. Open it, Mom. You have to go to boot camp in 15 days. That means Vietnam. Call your grandfather. He called his grandfather, a wise old man at his wheat farm. Granddad, J.C., listen, I'm going to boot camp in 15 days. They won't take you. No, have the piece of paper. I don't believe in paper. They won't take you. I had a hard time getting the calf born last night. I had to hitch the tractor up to pull the calf out. Granddad, I'm going to boot camp 15 days. They won't take you. Let me tell you about the calf. His granddad went on and on. J.C. hung up and called his mother. Mom, he didn't listen to me. He said they wouldn't take me. He went on and on about a calf. He's my dad. I'm with him. J.C. was furious. The two people he trusted most, they didn't listen to him. 15 days turned into 14, into 13, 12, 11, 10. He left electrical engineering, walking down the corridor, and there are students lined up outside the dean's office. And then on the bulletin board, NASA interviewing today. NASA! He got in line, has his policeman's uniform on, said to the student in front, what do you got? You got to have a government application, a NASA application, and your resume, or he won't talk to you. There's no time for any of that. The line melts down. J.C. steps in. The NASA man is packing his briefcase. What can I do for you, officer? I want to help put people on the moon. He looks at this cop, and J.C. says, I'm working my way through grad school. Well, listen, write down your name and your phone number. I got a plane to catch. Don't call us, we'll call you. The NASA man leaves. 9 days. 8 days. 7 days. 6 days. 5 days to boot camp. His mother calls. J.C., a man named Bernie Goodwin from NASA called. He said you should talk to him. Here's his phone number. He calls. Mr. Goodwin, J.C. Heigl. J.C., I checked into your record. You're brilliant, and you're full of fire. You're the kind of person we need. In fact, we want you to start Monday morning. Manned Space Center, Houston, 9 o'clock. I can't. Why? The draft? Yes, sir, the draft. Well, you're a policeman, J.C. You know possession is 9/10 of the law. You come, we possess you. Who runs the draft there? We have a colonel. Well, we have a general. Our general will talk to your colonel. I will see you Monday morning, Manned Space Center. Yes, sir. J.C. goes home, tells his mother. She says, call your grandfather. Granddad, I told you they wouldn't take you. J.C. borrows his mother's car, gets his guitar. He starts for Houston, Texas, thinking, Granddad must have negotiated a different fate for me with the Creator. 9 o'clock Monday morning, he is hired as an engineer, Manned Space Center. A few weeks go by, and Chris Kraft, who becomes the famed flight director, smoking a big cigar, comes over. How do you like it here, son? I love it. I love the responsibility. One thing, though. What's that? I'm used to reading books to learn what I should learn. What should I read? Son, we don't read books here. We write them. Soon enough, J.C. Heigl is writing the Agena Systems Handbook. J.C. Heigl is in Flight Control Center for all of the Apollo missions, people landing on the moon. And Kate said, Jack, he achieved his vision. Oh, Jack, there's a coda. Hey, listen to the coda. Apollo 13 is about to lift off, and J.C. gets another piece of paper, jury duty. So he goes downtown Houston, and everybody knows you don't get out of jury duty with Judge Singleton. Everyone's giving excuses. One woman is saying, Your Honor, you can see I'm pregnant. The baby will wait. What's your excuse? Your Honor, I am the lead retrofire officer for Apollo 13. What's a retrofire officer? Your Honor, I calculated the re-entry angle for the command module. If it's too steep, they burn up. If it's too shallow, they flip off and they do not come back. I don't usually make exceptions. I'll make one in this case if you do me a favor. Yes, sir. Bring them back alive. Yes, sir. Apollo 13 lifts off, up and up and up. It's up 200,000 miles. J.C. has finished his shift, goes out, gets in his car. He's driving out, turns on the radio. There's been an accident in space. He turns the car around. He runs into Flight Control Center. Men are running around. Some men are crying. There's been an accident. It's very serious, but they don't know exactly what's wrong. In all of the confusion, someone says, "We got to abort." "No," JC says. "No, you can't abort." JC is afraid if the motor is damaged and they try to make a U-turn, the motor may burn out and they won't get back. JC wants them to use the gravity of the moon to help shoot them back towards Earth. And that's what they do. So Jack, J.C. Hyagel, helps people get to the moon, helps them get back. Now, Jack, just tell me what you love about the story. Well, Kate, for one thing, you're too dramatic. Oh, thank you, Jack. Thank you. What else do you love about the story? I'm sorry, Kate. I like the part about the granddad. The only reason I'm at MIT is because of my granddad. My dad wanted me to be a lobsterman. I mentioned grad school once. He said, "Jack, you won't fit in. You won't fit in, Jack. They're not your people." I went to Granddad. He said, "Jack, go to grad school. If you learn enough, you can take your lobster boat to the stars." So here I am, Kate. Still don't fit in. Well, let's have the pizza. Oh, Kate, one thing, Kate. Next Thursday, do me a favor. Don't be dramatic. The next Thursday, Jack was coming up the stairs. And Kate was very nervous because she was going to be very dramatic. So she started thinking about the best about Jack and the worst. And they both happened last April. Last April, Jack showed up at her apartment wearing a yellow slicker. And he had one for her. They drove down to Gloucester, Massachusetts. Jack had a friend with a lobster boat. He borrowed the lobster boat, and Jack and Kate went way, way out to sea. The stars were brilliant, but the sea was rough. The boat was rocking, spray coming over the bow. This is Jack's world. He loved it. Kate hated it. Kate, I want to tell you a story that begins billions of years ago. Jack, condense the story. All right, Kate, all right. You know Jupiter. Jupiter is so big, Kate, you could put 1,200 Earths on the volume of Jupiter. You know the red storm on Jupiter, twice the size of the Earth. It's a storm that's been raging 300 years. The moment I saw you, Kate, I had a red spot on my heart. I love you, Kate. Marry me. Well, of course, she said yes. What a proposal. 2 days later, they were stuck in traffic in East Cambridge. Jack had the tweed jacket on. They were going to a departmental party. He hated those parties. Kate said, "Jack, I love it that our whole solar system is in a great bubble because of the solar wind." Kate, it is a heliosphere. Would you get the language? Heliosphere. It's not a bubble. Heliosphere. Jack, we have talked about that tone of voice of yours for about a year. It's demeaning. It's insulting. Go to the party alone. I'll take the subway home. She got out and slammed the car door. She was still so angry about that tone. 2 days later, she biked from Jamaica Plain to Somerville. Ran up to the second-floor apartment, opened the door. "Jack, here's your ring. It won't work." And then she turned and left. She stood outside the door feeling, what a coward. After 2.5 years, I can't stand there and talk it out and cry it out. Kate opened the door to go in. Jack was in the kitchen. And she heard a cry come from Jack. She'd never heard a cry like that before. She couldn't go in because she'd say yes. And it wasn't right. She was standing in her kitchen thinking of that when Jack came in. He had the old windbreaker on. "Kate, you all right?" "Oh, yes, Jack, I was just thinking of... Oh, you brought eclairs. Oh, sweet, Jack, thank you." "Jack, sit down. I have a scene and you're going to love it, Jack. I want Neil Armstrong to tell a story, so I've invented a character he tells it to." "You invented a character, Jack!" "It's a literary device to help tell the story. This is the idea. Armstrong's going into a nursing home to talk to an old man, a retired admiral. And the old man's in a wheelchair all bent over. Armstrong's known the old man, the admiral, for years, but the last few times Armstrong's come, the admiral has no idea who Armstrong is. None. And more than that, the old man, the admiral, doesn't talk anymore. The admiral's wife has asked Armstrong, give it one more try. Here's the scene. Armstrong stands at attention. Admiral Armstrong reporting for duty, sir. Admiral? Armstrong reporting for duty, sir. The old man lifts his head slowly. Armstrong? Navy pilot? Yes, sir. Combat duty? Yes, sir. Korea, sir. North Korea, sir. I was down 500 feet. My wing got sliced off. I had to eject. The only reason I'm here, Admiral, the wind blew me into a rice paddy instead of the sea. What's your latest duty? Moon, sir. Moon? Where's that? The moon, sir. The moon. 3 of us, sir. Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins, myself. Took us 3 days to get up to the moon. But now the question is, could we land, sir? Never been done before. 2 of us, Buzz Aldrin and myself, we crawl, really we float, into this lunar module. Lunar module? What kind of plane is that? It's an unusual flying machine, sir. Very small, like a cockpit. Switches, gauges. Some of the walls no thicker than a sheet of aluminum foil. There's a triangular window for me, one for Buzz, a circular window above us. So Admiral, we're standing, harnessed to the floor. Why are you standing? 2 seats, Admiral, would weigh 600 pounds. Less weight, less fuel. Oh, I should say, Admiral, just a couple of months before, Tom Stafford had been 50,000 feet above the moon. Wait a minute. Stafford. I know that name, Stafford. You go to the academy? Annapolis, yes, sir. Yes, Stafford. Did you know his mother came to Oklahoma when she was 6 in a covered wagon? No, sir. Well, it's true. She lived in a sod house. Now Stafford's 50,000 feet above the moon. Why didn't he land? His lunar module was too heavy. Ours was the first light enough to land and hopefully get off. All right, go on. We got permission to undock, sir. Now the question is, can we land on the moon? It's a programmed descent, which means the computer is running this, sir. We get down to 40,000 feet and we're lurching, sir. Like a drunk, Admiral. The radar had kicked in. The radar and the computer disagree, and we know the radar is right, so Buzz is working to try to get the computer to accept this information, but we're lurching, and then, boo, boo! This is a master alarm. This could be an abort, sir. This is very serious. Luckily, there's a young guy, Steve Bales, down there. He's been through this in a simulation. He says, go on that alarm, so down we go, sir. And now the problem snowballed, Admiral. Our computer is cutting out, which means Houston has nothing, sir. The screen's a blank. Then our computer cuts back in just enough information. So we keep going down. Boo! Master alarm, sir. We get down to 7,500 feet. We tilt over, and Admiral, I can see the cratered plains of the Sea of Tranquility. We're going to land, sir. 7,500 feet. Will we get down to 3,000 feet, sir? We're going slowly now, maybe 48 miles an hour. We got down to 1,000 feet, and now we're in real trouble, Admiral. The computer is flying us blindly into a crater. And that crater has boulders all around it. They're as big as trucks, sir. Big as cars. We could bust up, sir. So I take over. I'm flying this. About time, Armstrong. I'm flying this. I get down 220 feet. I'm skimming over to these boulders, looking for a place to land, Admiral. I've got a place over there. My heart is pounding. No, that place is no good. 90 seconds of fuel. Houston is silent. Houston knows nothing about the crater. I don't have time to tell him. Neither is Buzz. We are busy, sir. Then I find a place. I can land over there, sir. I can land over there. So I start down. 60 seconds of fuel. Our rocket blast is kicking up the dust. I can't see. 100 feet, but I can't see. I can't see. We get down to 50 feet above the moon. 30 seconds to land. And now the Eagle, that's what we call it, sir, is drifting backwards, and I don't understand why. And I'm fighting with this sideways motion. And the contact light turned on. We're on the moon. I turned to Buzz. We have these bubble helmets. We haven't shaved in days, and we shake hands. We're on the moon. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. And? Well, the plan called for us to go to sleep. Sleep, man, you're on the moon! Exactly, sir, we couldn't sleep. We asked permission to get out there. They said fine. I told you, Admiral, the module's very small. We have to put on these oxygen packs. It's awkward. Get the hoses just right. There's a long checkoff list. It takes a long time. So I'm doing that, and I look up through the circular window, and I think I'm going to see the blackness and the stars. And what I see, way up there, sir, way up, is the Earth. To me, it looks like a silver dollar. Blue and white. It's beautiful. I look out the triangular window, the desert. That's what it reminds me, sir. The moon reminds me of the desert, the play of light on it, but it's different. There's no atmosphere, so there's a strange clarity. And then I put on these boots that'll give me traction, and I thought of what I might say. You hadn't thought about it? Admiral, I'm a pilot. My job is to land and hopefully get off. It's not to say something, but I thought of something. So finally, I'm ready to open the hatch. I wouldn't want to be on the moon. Why is that, sir? Mosquitoes. No, sir, it's a vacuum. I made a joke. You got no sense of humor. I made a joke. Go ahead. I open the hatch. I pull the D-ring. So the television camera turns on, and now, Admiral, hundreds of millions of people all over the Earth are watching. It's awkward. I have to back out. I have the oxygen pack. I go down the ladder, and I get to the last rung, and I've got a 3-foot jump. We thought the legs would collapse, but we landed so gently they didn't. So I've got to jump down. Each of the legs has a big foot pad, Admiral. It's like a shallow soup bowl. So I jump down to the pad, and I jump back to make sure I can do it, and back down to the pad, sir, and now I'm holding onto the ladder. One of the scientists, Tommy Gold, he said the moon dust might be a mile deep. Don't want to go down a mile. So I put 1 foot on the moon. It's solid. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Pretty dull. What would you have said, Admiral? Well, my wife likes Thoreau. Thoreau would have said something like, I didn't come to change things, I came to wake the neighbors up. That would have been very good, Admiral, very good. Now I put both hands on the landing gear, and then I put my 2nd foot on the moon. And I let go. That took guts. It's like learning to walk again, sir, because of the 1/6 gravity. Seemed to be walking with the balls of my feet, my ankles. And then Buzz Aldrin came out. Buzz called it magnificent desolation. I bet Aldrin wanted to be the one to be first on the moon. Yes, sir. Yeah, if I'd been with you, I would have slipped you a Mickey. My wife wants to talk to you. The Admiral's wife, a beautiful woman, maybe 10 years younger. She had her hands folded, and she said, Neil, I remember the day the 3 of you lifted off. I remember that summer day, the excitement and the sound. But mostly I remember that white flame that lifted you up, that white fire. I've thought about it ever since. You know what I think that fire was made of, Neil? I don't mean combustion. I think that fire was made of the passion And the effort and the struggle of 600,000 people, all the scientists and engineers and secretaries and security people. That's what that fire was made of. Yes, ma'am. And that fire, Neil, I think it was made of the hopes of hundreds of millions of people all around the world that you'd make it. And that fire was made not just by great minds, but by every child who's ever wondered, where does a frog go in the winter? How could there be a bit of purple and green inside an icicle? Why does a blue jay sound different from a crow? And that fire was made of the courage of Amelia Earhart and the Wright brothers and Lindbergh. It was made by people all the way back 40,000 years. People who took torches, went into caves and made paintings. That's what that fire was made of, Neil. Yes, ma'am. And, ma'am, you know, when we got back from the moon, NASA sent us to countries all around the world, and people would run up. They would never say, "You did it." They would say, "We did it! We did it!" Well, Armstrong, that was a high moment of your life. Certainly one, sir. What do you mean, certainly one? Well, Admiral, when I was at Purdue, I met Jan, and we fell in love. That's quite a moment, sir, and 3 children. Ah, how are your children? My boys are doing fine, sir. But my daughter, she died of a brain tumor before she got to be 3. Oh. The old Admiral reached his hand out, and he took Armstrong's, and he squeezed it and looked at him. I'm sorry to hear that. And he smiled. My wife will see you out. Oh, wait a minute. One thing, yes, sir. You're a fine man, but work on your sense of humor. Yes, sir. Out in the corridor, the Admiral's wife said, Well, Neil, I might not see his fire again, but I saw it today. Thank you. Well, Jack, that's the second story. What do you think? Well, Kate, you know, I asked you as a favor last week, don't be dramatic. Jack, I'm an engineer. I design things for a purpose, Jack. At MIT, we're facing a general audience, not just scientists. And this is who I am. Now, Jack, what are you going to do? Run something by me? Well, Kate, I'm not quite ready, and so I'm going to run along now. All right. Wait, Jack, wait. Take eclairs. Take 2 of the eclairs. I'll see you next Thursday.
There's a lot yet to come on today's episode, but I wanted to take just a moment to introduce you to another one of the shows from among the BYU Radio family of podcasts. The show is called Constant Wonder. It's hosted by Marcus Smith, and in every episode of Constant Wonder, Marcus will have a riveting conversation with an individual whose life has been touched by the awe and wonder in nature, human nature or the natural world. It's all phenomenal. Uncover captivating stories that shed light on the wonders of creation. And you'll walk away feeling a little awestruck yourself from just about every episode. It's Constant Wonder with Marcus Smith. You can find it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or YouTube, all kinds of ways to listen to Constant Wonder whenever you like. Get a little dose of awe. Constant Wonder from BYU Radio.
The next Thursday, Jack came up the stairs into the kitchen. He was wearing a shirt and tie and tweed jacket. There was no gift. Well, Jack, let me run the 3rd story by, and then I want to hear everything you're going to do. I'm going to say to the audience, this is the 3rd true story. It begins in 1951 in Columbia Point, Boston. Columbia Point is on a little spit of land in Dorchester Bay, far from downtown Boston. And the story begins with a 3-year-old girl on a tricycle, an adventurer. Krista Corrigan. Jack, I'll tell the story. The 3-year-old girl, Krista Corrigan, on her tricycle bumped onto the street. Maybe the buildings in Boston looked like castles. A neighbor shouted, "Hey, Krista! Krista!" The neighbor ran out, picked Krista up, and brought her home. Krista Corrigan was an adventurer. She loved music, So she was close to her dad, Ed Corrigan. He was a Navy veteran studying at Boston College, and he played the piano. And Krista Corrigan grew up singing with her dad. High school, Krista took up the guitar. She loved Joan Baez. She loved the Beatles. She loved Bob Dylan. Krista Corrigan married Steve McAuliffe when she was 21. And Krista McAuliffe truly blossomed in her early 30s. She was teaching American history at Concord High School in Concord, New Hampshire. One of her students later said, Mrs. McAuliffe didn't stand for intolerance, and all the bullies knew it. He said he remembered the day she used the word gay, and she said she knew gay people. And he said it was as if a rock was lifted off my chest. At least one person accepted me for who I was. Krista McAuliffe was a fresh wind in Concord, New Hampshire. She helped raise money for the Y and the hospital. She volunteered on the one hand to teach catechism, on the other to be a receptionist at Planned Parenthood. But her greatest focus was her children. She wrote in her journal, "How could two children be so different? Scott is 5. Last night he turned Sesame Street off because a cartoon cat was eating a cartoon mouse. And Caroline is 3. She doesn't ask, she demands." A couple of years later, Krista wrote, "I brought Caroline along and I was getting my hair done, so I'm sitting there getting my hair done, looking in the mirror, thinking to myself, now, what ploy will Caroline use to get that woman beside her talking?" And she saw Caroline turn and say, "You have very nice pearls. Where did you get them? I'd like to have pearls like that." Krista and Steve were driving one August day through Concord, New Hampshire. President Reagan was on the radio saying, "We're going to send a teacher in space." And Steve said, "Go for it. You love space." So she applied. She got the application, but Krista McAuliffe was a procrastinator. She was famous for it. She would arrive at the teachers' meetings 15 minutes late. She would have Caroline in her lap. Well, she put the application off and off. Steve said, "Are you going to fill it out?" So she sat down with her students. They helped make out the application. The essay she had to do all by herself. She wrote it 5 times. She wrote, "In developing my course, The American Woman, I learned that the journals of ordinary people tell a fuller story of history. Like the pioneers on the Conestoga wagons, I, as a pioneer in space, will keep a journal." She mailed it February 1st, 1985, the last possible day. But what chance did she have? What chance? 11,500 teachers applied. What chance? But she made the cutoff. 114 teachers were to fly tomorrow to Washington, D.C. So Krista wanted a good night's sleep. She got Caroline to sleep. She got Scott to bed. Krista wanted sleep, but she didn't get it because there was a knock on the door. She opened the door. There was a high school student there, a young woman, almost hysterical. "Mrs. McAuliffe, I think I'm going to kill myself. Please, can I come in, please?" She brought her in and said, "Can I call your parents?" "You can call them if you promise I don't have to spend the night with them." She promised. The parents came. They talked and talked. 3 a.m. The parents had left. The student is still there. Finally, Krista got her to sleep. Krista wakes up, exhausted, cup of coffee, flies to Washington, D.C., and she is chosen to be the teacher in space. Boom, boom, big parade in Concord, New Hampshire. The press is coming from all over. Japan, BBC, NBC to Concord, New Hampshire. 6 months before the Challenger with a crew of 7, including Krista, is to lift off. At the Morton Thiokol Company in Utah, an engineer, Roger Beaujolais, writes a memo to senior management. "If we don't solve this problem immediately, there can be a catastrophe, loss of human life." Beaujolais is talking about the rubber O-rings. They are seals. that seal the joints in the solid rocket booster that lifts the Challenger up. This had been a problem for years. In the past, hot gases had blown by the primary ring. If they blew by the secondary ring, there would be an explosion. Krista knows nothing of this. Krista is worried about meeting the crew. She's getting all the publicity. She meets Dick Scobie, the commander of the Challenger mission. He's 6'1", he's handsome. He's a former Vietnam fighter pilot. He says, "Krista, these are not firecrackers that lift us off. This is the real thing." Krista wins him over. He realizes she's the real thing. And Dick Scobie brings her aside one day and says, "Krista, this will always be remembered as the teacher in space mission. We're proud of it." The Challenger is to lift off January 28th, 1986. The day before, January 27th, NASA from Birmingham calls Morton Thiokol Company in Utah. "Hey, listen, Thiokol, it's going to be cold in Florida for the launch tomorrow. Might be down in the low 20s. We safe to launch?" The manager at Morton Thiokol Company says, No, we've been talking to the engineers. It's got to be 53 degrees or higher. We're worried about the resiliency of the O-rings." "Well, listen, Thiokol, why don't we get on the horn tonight? We'll have a big telephone conference." That night, NASA, Morton Thiokol are on the telephone. It begins with a long history of the O-rings. Finally, a NASA man got frustrated. He did not think Thiokol had proved his case. He said, "Thiokol, what do you want us to do? Wait till April to launch?" The manager at Morton Thiokol says, "Listen, NASA, we'll be back on the horn. We're going to talk among ourselves here." 4 managers, Morton Thiokol Company, says, "We got to make a managerial decision," meaning the engineers are going to be excluded. So Arnie Thompson, engineer, comes forward with a sketch. He's worried about the resiliency of the O-rings. He's worried it won't expand and seal in the cold. He's not listened to. Roger Beaujolais comes running forward. He has 2 photos. The photos show the hot gas penetrating, blowing by the primary ring. He's not listened to. The managers call back. "Hey, listen, NASA, we've changed our mind. It's safe to launch." The next morning, Krista and the crew are woken at 6:20. They have breakfast. They're given a weather briefing. It's 25 degrees out, with the wind chilled single digits. Dick Scobie leads them out. They can see icicles on the launch tower. A NASA man says, "Krista, here, take an apple." She said, "Save it. I'll eat it when I get back." At 8:30, the crew was strapped in. They were on their backs. Out in the cold, Krista's parents, Ed and Grace Corrigan, shivered and waited. At 11:38, the Challenger lifts up, and it is magnificent. Up and up for a minute, and then there's this yellow plume, and then a fireball. And out of the fireball come the debris of the Challenger. And then this tower of pure white smoke and silence. And Ed Corrigan says, "She's gone. She's gone." And Jack stood up and said, "Why would you do that? We have 1 hour at MIT. You're not going to talk about death." "Jack, I am going to talk about Krista McAuliffe because millions of people will never forget that moment." There was a writer on the San Diego freeway at the time of the explosion. He said all of the cars on the freeway slowed down at the same moment. I'm going to do this because Krista is the ordinary person. She's all of us, Jack. Maybe the best of all, but she's all of us. If I talk about Krista, then we remember all of the crew of the Challenger, all of the crew of the Columbia. We remember Gus Grissom, Ed White, Roger Chaffee. And I'm going to do it because it's exploration. And this is dangerous, Jack. Magellan set out with 5 ships. Magellan died along the way. Did you know that he died? One of his ships made it back in just under 3 years with 22 of the original 280. It's dangerous. And lastly, Jack, it's science. I have to have the courage to tell the truth. Oh, Kate has got to have the courage to tell the truth. Courage. Kate, you walked in. We'd been in love 2.5 years. Here's your ring, Jack. It won't work. You didn't have the guts to stand there and talk it out and shout it out. You're right, Jack. I was scared. I'm scared now, Jack. Jack, my mother was 18 years old, freshman in college, brilliant pianist. Mom thought she might be great. Dad was a senior, and he said to Mom, would you take a couple of years off, get the hardware store started? So she did. Then I was born. My brother was born. She never got back. You know what a horrible stroke Dad has had. You know his mind doesn't work. He doesn't talk. Mom wheels him into the hardware store every day. That's her life, Jack. That's her life. Her one free day is Sunday. She's at home. You know what she does? She washes the walls, Jack. I think she washes the walls to make the walls disappear. Jack took Kate's hand and said, we're on Sunday night at 7 o'clock, Kate. Be there at 6 for a sound check. The next night was Friday night. Jack was in his apartment. There was a knock on the door. The door was flung open. In came Cynthia Moss, Kate's apartment mate. She came straight up to Jack. They were eye to eye. Cynthia put her hands on her hips. I don't know what went on between the two of you last night, Jack, but Kate is very upset, and she's got the GREs tomorrow, and everything rides on them. I asked Kate, why are you doing this dumb program with Jack? You know what she said? She said, for the first time, we can see the earth from afar. We see it small and precious. She said, for the first time, we're stretching out into the universe, and if we could take that in, there's no telling how grand our vision might become. Why are you doing this, Jack? What are you going to do Sunday night at MIT? Well, Cynthia, for your information, I might read a complete list of the accomplishments of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and explain a few of them in a way that even you can understand them. Jack, what happened to you? Used to be such fun, Jack. You'd come up the stairs singing. We called you the Pavarotti Lobsterman. I know what you're going to do Sunday night. You're going to come out on the stage. You're going to have a shirt and tie and that tweed jacket and your half glasses, your fake half glasses. You're going to hide behind the podium. You're going to stutter till we're sorry for you. Then you're going to bore us. Well, if you bore us, I'm bringing celery. I'm going to eat the celery. And if you dare to condescend to us, I'll throw the celery at you. Don't ruin this for Kate! Sunday night at MIT, 7:15. Kate was backstage and she peeked out, and there was a good crowd. Cynthia had a front seat. She was wearing her green wig, and she had something in a paper bag on her lap. Kate heard something, turned, and it was Edith Whiteside. Kate de Cordova, I read about this in the Boston Globe. You gave me a leaf, I give you a rose. Take us to the stars. And that's exactly what Kate did. She told the audience about being 5 years old and her dad becoming the poet. Kate, the blackness and the stars are not just above us, they're all around us, Kate, they're all around us. The audience was fascinated to hear about a 5-year-old Cherokee boy who had a vision. And he stayed with the vision. She told the story, and then she told them that J.C. High Eagle had been an engineer 40 years at NASA and had established a society to support and encourage Native Americans to become scientists and engineers. And then the audience was surprised to find out how hard that first moon landing was. And maybe even more important, they heard that people all around the world said, "We did it! We did it!" This was NASA's accomplishment, but it was also humanity's. And finally, they were honored that she told the truth about Christa McAuliffe and the Challenger. And now it was up to Jack. Jack came out on the stage, shirt, tie, tweed jacket, half glasses. He stood behind the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, I thought I might read a complete list of the accomplishments of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory responsible for robots. Jack took off the half-glasses, put them on the podium. He took off the tweed jacket, put it on the podium. He stepped out in front. He put his hands in his pocket, and he seemed to expand. There was a power about him. Sounds wicked boring, doesn't it? My first memories of the stars were my granddad, when I was 5 or 6, in his lobster boat off Portland, Maine, 4 a.m. My granddad said, "Some people go to offices, my office mates of the stars." My granddad taught me celestial navigation. I found out I was good with numbers. My dad taught me piloting. Physics is the push and pull of things. It's like lobstering. You push the pot out and you pull the pot in. And you got to pay attention in both. I'm going to tell you one story about the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And I selected this because it's a marriage of science and imagination, and that's what NASA does best. My story begins when space exploration, pretty new, 1965. It begins with Gary Flandro. Gary Flandro was a Caltech grad student also working for JPL. So Flandro's in his office, JPL, paying attention, and he says to himself, my gosh! He realizes the outer planets, the gas giants, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, are going to be lined up on one side of the sun in a way they haven't been lined up for 176 years. They haven't been lined up this way since Jefferson's time, and they're not going to be lined up this way for another 176 years. And Flandro, he knows all about gravity assist. That means you take a spacecraft, you come behind a planet, and the gravity of the planet flings it forward at a tremendous speed. And Flandro says this is a time for a grand tour of the outer planets, a grand tour. Now remember, this is 1965. Just getting to Mars means a lot of failures. Mars, when it's closest to Earth, is 35 million miles away. When you're talking about Neptune, you're talking about 2.5 billion miles. Can it be done? Is it possible? And Congress says it's too expensive. Cut it back. Cut it way back. Maybe you can go to Jupiter and Saturn. That's it. The engineers and scientists got busy designing and building 2 spacecraft, the Voyagers. They weighed only about 1,800 pounds. And they build them with great care because what if it's done with such care you can get to Jupiter and Saturn and Uranus? Is it possible? Nobody knew. 1977, both of them are going to be launched, the Voyagers. Here's where imagination comes in, an odd kind of imagination. Carl Sagan, the astronomer, says, why not send a message with the Voyagers? What kind of message? And he talks to Lewis Thomas, the biologist, and Thomas says, well, why don't we send all of Bach? And he says, no, that would be boasting. Sound. How would we send sound on a record? A copper record, gold-plated, that would last at least 1 million years. What kind of sounds? Why don't we send hello in 55 languages? Hello. And the sounds of the earth. Yes, the sound of frogs, whales, the sound of thunder, the sound of insects, the sound of rain, the sound of a baby crying, the sound of a kiss, Morse code sound. And music, yes, we'll send Mozart and Bach, and we'll send Stravinsky. More imagination. They call across the country to the World Music Center. There's a Mr. Brown there. He says, you mean these 2 things are going to go to the stars? Then you got to send Kisa Bai Kirkar. Who's that? She's from Calcutta, beloved in India. Kisa Bai Kirkar. Get her singing Jahan Hat Ho. Now the doors are opening. Not just Western music. They talk to Alan Lomax, who has spent his life collecting ethnic music. Lomax says, listen to this. A Bulgarian shepherdess song. That's the sound of people who had enough to eat for the first time. Now the doors are flung wide open. Australian horn and totem music. Pygmy Girl's initiation song. Melanesian panpipes. Chinese chin music. Japanese flute music. But all of this takes time. There's only 3 days left and the list must be closed. They call across the country to Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown, we can't find a record of this Kiesaw by Kirka. We've tried everything. Find it! There's only 2 days left. They call across the country. Mr. Brown, we can't find it! So they call Indian restaurants all around the country. And one of them says, yes, in New York City, Lexington Avenue in the 20s. There's an appliance store run by an Indian family. Go into the appliance store. You will see a card table with a Madras cover. Under the card table is a carton with a record of her singing that song. They get it. And then they get President Carter to send a message. He says, this is a present from our small planet. And I think maybe we're growing up. Instead of taking everything from the universe, we're giving something back. And so in August 1977, the first of the voyages lift off. September, the second Voyager lifts off with 55 hellos. Bonjour, ciao, ni hao, shalom, ahlan, wasahlan. Hello, hello, we want to say hello. We want to say hello to you. 1979, a flyby Jupiter, and the scientists excited. They discover one of Jupiter's moons, Io. Turns out to be the most volcanic body in our solar system. And they discover Europa, another moon of Jupiter, has a crust of ice. But underneath that crust of ice may be a salt sea bigger than the Atlantic and Pacific put together. There may be life. And the voyagers sail on. Hello, hello, we want to say hello, Saturn. And then, in 1986, January 24th through 28th, a flyby Uranus. 4 exciting days flying by Uranus. And on that 4th day, January 28th, 1986, on the East Coast, the Challenger explodes. And the voyagers sail on. Hello, hello, we want to say hello. The Berlin Wall falls. The voyagers sail on. Nelson Mandela released from prison after 27 years, and the voyagers sail on. 2 Russians, 1 American live 136 days in space. Living in space has begun. Cooperation in space has begun, and the voyagers sail on. Hello, hello. The Hubble telescope is launched. Blurred vision. It's the joke of late-night television. The blurred vision is corrected, and now, through the Hubble telescope, we see objects 12 billion light-years away. We see the dance of the universe as it's never been seen, and the voyagers sail on. February 14th, 1990, Voyager 2 is beyond Pluto and sends back a photograph of our solar system. In that photograph, the Earth is no bigger than the eye of a goldfish. It's a speck. On that speck is everything we love, and the voyagers sail on. Hello, hello, the Clinton years. Princess Diana dies. The year 2000. My dad, a lobsterman in Maine, crosses the street in Portland. He collapses. He's dead of a heart attack. We had our ups and downs, but I'm shaken. And the Voyager sails on. 9/11, the whole country is shaken, and the Voyager sails on. Hello, hello. 2003, I come to MIT wondering, am I good enough to get a PhD? I'm scared to death. I meet a young woman, engineering student, and we fall in love. And the Voyager sails on. Hello, hello. 2004, 2 rovers, Spirit and Opportunity, set down on Mars. They're expected to go 3 months and stop, because the solar panels will be covered with dust. Surprise! The wind on Mars blows the dust off, and Spirit and Opportunity are going at this moment. 2004, the unmanned spacecraft Cassini begins to orbit Saturn. Cassini is the work of NASA and the European Space Agency and the Italian Space Agency. And now, because of Cassini, we see the rings on Saturn as clearly as you see the grooves in a record, and the Voyager sails on. Hello, hello. I get engaged. I'm a stuffed shirt. She calls it off and breaks my heart, and the Voyagers sail on. My left fist is the sun. My right fist is the Earth, 93 million miles away. The Voyagers, They're not even in the room. They're downtown. The Voyagers are 10 billion miles from the sun. I'm sure you all know about the solar wind, particles streaming out from the sun at 1 million miles an hour and more, forming a great bubble that a whole solar system is in. Some people call it a heliosphere. Bubble's a better term. In 6 or 7 years, the Voyagers are going to leave our solar system, go to interstellar space. They're going to reach the Oort cloud in the year 26,000. They're going to make the closest approach to the star Sirius in the year 296,036. And they are going to pass the 12 nearest stars in the year 1 million. And who knows, maybe some civilization will find one of the Voyagers play the golden record, and they'll hear Kisa Bag Kirkar. They'll hear Pygmy Girl's initiation song, Melanesian panpipes. They'll hear Louis Armstrong, Navajo night chant. And they'll hear Chuck Berry and Mozart and Bach. They'll hear Stravinsky and blind Willie Johnson singing Dark Was the Night. And maybe they'll say, these beings want to dance. And I think that'd be just about right. Jack stepped forward, looked at everybody and said, seemed to me what we've been doing the last 50 years, we've been dancing our way into the universe. Jack finished. Silence. Edith Whiteside stood up and began to applaud. Kate never heard such a roar of applause. Cynthia, she ran up the stage stairs, threw her arms around Jack. 3 weeks later, Jack and Kate went down to Gloucester, Massachusetts. Jack borrowed his friend's lobster boat, and Jack and Kate went way, way out to sea. The stars were brilliant and the sea was calm. Jack put his hands on her shoulders and said, Kate, the blackness and the stars are not just above us, they're all around us, Kate. They're inside us, Jack. All of the molecules in our bodies, Jack, were forged billions of years ago in generations of stars. They're inside us. Jack, I want to get married. You're serious? Yes, I love you, Jack. I'm scared, but I love you. I've even thought about the wedding food. I want pizza and eclairs. I want to be married on Mars. Oh, Kate, I'll take you in my lobster boat. What do you think? That'd be great, Jack. Why not? Why not? Why not?
That was the great New England storyteller Jay O'Callahan with a story called Forged in the Stars, a piece commissioned by NASA in 2008 on the occasion of its 50th anniversary. And in case you're looking for an update on the Voyager probes, they are still traveling in interstellar space, far beyond our solar system. Voyager 1 has traveled farther than any other spacecraft ever, 15.6 billion miles as of this writing, and still inspiring me like crazy. Thanks to Jay O'Callahan for his stories, and we'll be back next week with an Appleseed episode more like the ones you're accustomed to. And until then, we hope you'll share stories of exploration from your own life with the people you love. The Appleseed is produced by me, Sam Payne, Wendy Folsom, Brian Tanner, and Kira Van Dam. The rest of the Appleseed team is Tristan Schetzel, Kay Hendricks, and Nico Wetzel. We're pleased and proud to be among the many podcasts produced by the BYU Radio family of shows. If you want more great storytelling for the whole family, then search for our companion podcast, Kaboom, where you'll hear original audio adventures for the whole family. You can find any episode of The Appleseed or Kaboom on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on the BYU Radio app, or at byuradio.org. Don't forget to subscribe, rate us, and leave a review. That's how the shows grow. I'm Sam Payne, and we can't wait to be with you again on The Appleseed.